I found out I was adopted when I was 23 years old by reading my mother's journal that I wasn't supposed to find. It was sitting on her nightstand, leather-bound and expensive, the kind of thing you leave out because you want people to know you have depth. I was home for the weekend, helping her organize the bedroom after she'd mentioned something about starting fresh with the daycare. I moved it to dust the table, and it fell open to a page dated March 1998. Sometimes I wonder if she'll ever really feel like ours. David says I'm being ridiculous, but there's something missing. She doesn't have his eyes or my smile. She just looks at us sometimes like she's waiting for the real family to show up. The words blurred. I read them again, and again. My hands were shaking in that specific way where you're not sure if you're about to cry or throw up or both. I didn't confront her that day. I closed the journal carefully, put it back exactly where it was, and drove back to my apartment in the city in silence. Radio off, windows up, just me and the sound of my own breathing, which had become strange and shallow. But this isn't really about that moment. That's just where everything started to make sense. Growing up, I was the kind of kid who learned early not to take up space. My parents had my older brother Marcus before they met each other. They married when he was 2, and 3 years later I came along. Except I didn't come along. I was chosen, paid for, arranged for, and somewhere deep in my mother's heart I was never quite right. My father, David, not Dad most of the time, was a cardiac surgeon. Brilliant, exhausted, the kind of man who'd come home and read the newspaper before he'd read the room. He never asked about my day. He'd ask Marcus about soccer, about college prospects, about the future that mattered. When I talked, he'd nod while his eyes stayed on whatever article he was reading. My mother, Janet, was a landscape architect. She was the type of beautiful that required maintenance, regular manicures, expensive highlights, standing posture that looked almost painful. She loved entertaining. She'd host these elaborate dinner parties where she'd position herself as the warm, nurturing center of everything, laughing at her own jokes, touching people's arms when she spoke. I watched her do this. I watched her perform, and I never believed it even as a child. Marcus and I weren't close. He was 5 years older and had already constructed his own exit strategy by high school. He went to an Ivy League school on their dime, then moved to California for consulting, then married someone named Patricia and had 2 children and basically disappeared from family dynamics with the kind of grace that only the biological child of wealthy parents can manage. He sent Christmas cards. That was about it. I was the one who stayed, not by choice really, by the simple inertia of not knowing how to leave. My childhood was quiet in the way that unstated rejection is quiet. It's not abusive, it's not dramatic, it's just this constant, subtle message that your existence is a minor inconvenience. My mother would forget about school plays until the last minute. My father would miss parent-teacher conferences because of surgeries. They forgot my birthday once, not intentionally, they said. They just got busy. I turned 12 while they were at a medical conference. I learned to comfort myself. I became someone who needed nothing from anybody. I got good grades not because they pushed me, but because I wanted to disappear into achievement. I worked part-time in high school, babysat for neighbors, stayed out of the house as much as possible. I made myself useful to other families, because at least then my presence felt like it was earning its keep. When I went to college, it was to a good school about 3 hours away, close enough that they could have visited regularly. They never did. My mother sent a care package once, filled with items I didn't like and didn't ask for. My father called maybe twice a semester to ask how my grades were. There was no pride in it, just a quick efficiency like checking something off a list. I changed majors 3 times because I was terrified of committing to the wrong thing, of choosing something they wouldn't approve of. I ended up in marketing, which is basically the safe version of everything. It paid well. It was respectable. It meant nothing to me. After college, I moved to Portland. I chose Portland specifically because it was far enough away to make regular visits impossible, but close enough that I could frame it as a reasonable distance. I was running away, but I was doing it slowly, deliberately, with the kind of caution that someone who's never been allowed to take up space learns to maintain. I got a job at a mid-sized advertising firm. I was good at it. I was good at understanding what people wanted before they knew it themselves. I could read the space between what someone said and what they meant. Years of living with people who didn't want you teaches you that skill. My apartment was small, a studio above a coffee shop. I could hear the espresso machine at 5 a.m. every morning, and instead of hatting it, I found it comforting. It meant I wasn't alone. It meant there was life happening around me, even if I wasn't quite part of it. I had friends, but they were the kind of friends you have when you've never learned how to let people close. I'd go to happy hour, I'd laugh at the right times, I'd remember their problems and ask about them the next time we talked. But I didn't let them past a certain point. They knew I had parents somewhere on the East Coast. They didn't know I'd stopped calling them. The year I turned 25, I was put on a significant campaign for a sustainable fashion brand. It was a big deal. My name would be on the portfolio work. There was a bonus attached. For the first time in my professional life, I felt like I'd built something real. I called my mother to tell her. I remember standing in my apartment, looking out at the street below, waiting for the right moment in the conversation to bring it up. She was talking about a garden installation that had won some local award. I waited for her to finish. Then I said, I got a promotion. Well, not a promotion exactly, but I'm leading this major campaign and it's really important to me. There was a pause and then, that's nice, Sterling. Hey, are you eating enough? You sound thin. I'm not sure what I was expecting. Recognition, maybe. Pride. Some acknowledgement that I existed in the world and was capable of making things happen. What I got was the same casual dismissal I'd learned to expect 25 years earlier. That's when I think I started to build the wall that would eventually matter. 2 years passed, I got promoted, legitimately promoted. I moved to a larger apartment on a better street. I started taking care of myself in the way you do when you're trying to prove to the universe that you're worth something. I ran 3 miles every morning. I went to therapy. I read books about attachment and childhood trauma because I was fascinated by the question of whether I was broken or just practical. My therapist, Dr. Reeves, was a woman in her 60s who had this quality of seeming amused by human pain without being cruel about it. She never pushed me to call my parents. She just asked questions and let me sit with the answers. One afternoon, she asked me directly, "Do you think they're capable of loving you the way you need to be loved?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the rain hit the window of her office, thinking about how much energy I'd spent trying to become small enough that they might accidentally love me. "I don't think they're capable of it," I finally said. "I think they're capable of feeling obligated to it, but the love part, the part where you matter just because you exist, I don't think that's something they have in them." "Then what are you still working for?" Dr. Reeves asked quietly. That question followed me out of her office and into the next 6 months of my life. The kindness moment came from an unexpected person. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she was a freelancer I'd hired to do some design work on a smaller campaign. She was maybe 5 years older than me, with this confidence that came from actually knowing her own worth. We were working late one night, and I was being difficult about something, pushing back on her design choices, being perfectionist to the point of cruelty. I was stressed about the campaign, about my job, about the fact that my parents were visiting Portland for the first time in 5 years, and I'd asked them to come to the office for a showcase. Sarah finally set down her mouse and turned to look at me. "Hey," she said, "you know it's okay to not be fine, right? Like you don't have to perform being on top of everything." It was such a small thing, such an obvious observation, but no one had ever said it to me before. My entire life had been about performing, about being so good, so put together, so undemanding that I became invisible. And this person I barely knew had just given me permission to be messy. I didn't cry, I just said, "I know," but I didn't actually know. She texted me a therapist recommendation later that night, someone who specialized in family trauma, and I almost deleted it, but I saved it instead. More importantly, she did something else. She came in early the next day before I got to the office, and she'd redone the entire campaign framework. Not to be show-offy about it, but because she saw that I was breaking under the pressure, and she did something about it. I asked her why. She said, "Because that's what you do when you see someone drowning." I barely remembered this moment at the time. I was too caught up in the nightmare that was about to unfold. My parents arrived on a Thursday evening. I picked them up from the airport. My mother looked exactly the same, which meant she'd invested significant money into staying that way. My father was older. His hair was fully grey now, his face lined in a way that suggested years of concentration. Neither of them seemed particularly happy to see me. The showcase was Friday afternoon. I'd prepared for weeks. I had the boards laid out perfectly. I had my talking points memorized, but not in a way that seemed memorized. I was ready. My boss had invited them into the conference room. My mother settled into a chair with the kind of posture that suggested she was bestowing her presence on everyone. My father looked at his watch twice before I even started. I walked through the campaign. It was good work. I knew it was good work. I could see it in the faces of the other people in the room. I could see it in my boss's expression, that careful neutrality that precedes genuine respect. When I finished, there was silence. Then my boss started applauding. People joined in. It felt like validation in the purest form. I looked at my parents. My mother was smiling in that practiced way. "That's wonderful, Sterling, really, you must work very hard." My father nodded. "Good job." And that was it. No questions, no interest, no follow-up, just the same distant pride you'd give a stranger who'd done something competent. I felt something break inside my chest, actually break, like something small and essential had snapped. After the showcase, I took them to dinner at a restaurant I'd researched carefully. My mother spent the entire meal talking about people I'd never met, friends of hers, their children, their accomplishments. My father ate quietly and checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. At one point my mother said, "You know, Marcus's firm is doing really well. Patricia mentioned they might buy a second vacation home." The words landed like a specific kind of weapon, not random, aimed. I said nothing. I cut my steak into smaller and smaller pieces and didn't eat any of it. They left the next morning. My mother asked if I could help with their luggage as if I was the hotel staff. My father didn't hug me. He never hugged me. He patted my shoulder awkwardly, the kind of gesture you'd give to a colleague you weren't sure about. In the car on the way to the airport, my mother turned to me and said, "You know, your father's been thinking, this apartment of yours must be very expensive. If you're struggling, we could help. We'd be happy to help." The implication was clear. You're not worth the investment of us being proud. I said, "I'm fine, I don't need help." She smiled. "Of course not, you never needed anything, did you?" The cruelty of that statement, the casual way she'd inverted my survival mechanism into character evidence, hit me so hard I almost had to pull over. I didn't go back to the apartment after I dropped them off. I went to work early. I sat at my desk in the empty office and I looked at the walls of my professional life, the awards, the work that had meant everything to me, the evidence that I was capable of building something real. And I understood, finally and completely, that I had built it for the wrong reason. I had built it to prove something to people who were never going to be proud of me, no matter what I did. That's when the real breakdown started. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like I fell apart in some visible way. Instead, I became very small. I'd go to work and do my job perfectly, but I'd gone hollow inside. I'd come home and sit in my apartment without turning on the lights. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and lie there thinking about how empty this all was. I called in sick to work for 3 days. I didn't leave my apartment. I didn't shower. I just sat there, understanding for the first time what it meant to live without hope. On the 4th day, Sarah showed up at my door. She had a key because I'd given her one so she could access files when I wasn't there. She took one look at me and didn't ask any questions. She just went to my bathroom, started a shower and came back and said, "Go." After I showered, she made tea. She didn't say much. She just sat across from me and said, "You're worth something, you know, not because of what you make or what you do, just because you exist." It was almost verbatim what my therapist had been trying to get me to understand for 2 years. But hearing it from Sarah in my kitchen, with her looking directly at me like she meant it, something shifted. Not fixed, shifted. "I don't know how to believe that," I said. "I know," she said, "but I believe it for now. You can believe it later." 2 weeks after my parents' visit, I got a call from my mother. She was using her casual voice, the one she saved for things that were actually important. "We wanted to talk to you about something," she said. "About this campaign of yours, the successful one. Your father was thinking, and well, we'd both like to invest in it. We think it could be really big and we'd like to be part of it." I didn't understand at first. "What do you mean, invest?" "We have some money we've been thinking about putting towards something meaningful," my mother said. "And since this is your work, we'd like to do that. We'd want to be partners, of course. It's only fair that we get some percentage, some say in how it develops." I heard my father in the background. "It's a good investment opportunity." That's what I was to them, an opportunity. I said no. "No what?" my mother asked. "No to all of it. no to the investment, no to the partnership, no to the pretense that you care about anything except the money this might make. There was silence, then my mother said in a careful voice, "That's a very unfair assessment." "Is it?" I said. "You show up for the first time in 5 years to a showcase you could have attended to any of my performances, my graduations, any moment of my actual life. You attend because I built something successful, and now you want a piece of it." "Sterling," my father started. "You didn't know me," I said. "Either of you, you never asked, you never tried. And the moment I became profitable, you showed up demanding a piece. Do you understand how that feels?" My mother said, "We're your parents. We're allowed to be part of your life." "No," I said, "parents are allowed. You gave up that right when you made it clear I was a mistake you tolerated." I told them that I'd found the journal. I told them that it explained everything. I told them that I had spent 25 years trying to become someone worth loving, and I was finally done. Done trying, done waiting, done performing. My father said, "You're being hysterical." That word, hysterical, confirmed everything I'd understood about myself my entire life. My pain wasn't valid. My experience wasn't real. It was just an emotional overreaction that I should be ashamed of. "I'm hanging up now," I said. "I'm not going to contact you for a while. I need to not have you in my life." My mother said very quietly, "Is this about the adoption? Because we always loved you. We've always." I hung up. The next few months were strange. They were peaceful and terrible at the same time. I cut contact, complete contact. I didn't block them, but I also didn't respond when they called or emailed. My therapist was supportive of this boundary, though she was careful not to say I was right or they were wrong. She just said, "You're taking care of yourself, that matters." Sarah became more present in my life. She was someone who showed up without asking for anything in return. We'd have coffee, we'd work together. One night, after several months of friendship, she kissed me in her kitchen, and I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being afraid of being known. I'd been so used to rejection that I hadn't even considered the possibility of acceptance. But Sarah seemed to accept me, all the broken, empty, defensive parts of me, without needing me to earn it or prove it or perform it. A year after the confrontation with my parents, I was in a much different place. I'd started my own small consulting firm with Sarah. We worked with smaller companies, brands that actually mattered, that were trying to do something good in the world. It was less money than my agency job. It was infinitely more meaningful. And then, 8 months into this new life, I got a letter. It was from my father, and it was short. "Your mother is sick, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors are saying she has maybe 6 months. I understand you're angry with us, but I thought you should know. She's been asking about you." I sat with this information for a long time. I didn't feel what I thought I'd feel. I didn't feel relief or satisfaction or closure. I just felt tired and sad in a way that was deeper than anger. I called him. "I'm not coming back," I said. "I'm not going to be her deathbed redemption arc." "I'm not asking for that," he said, and he sounded older than I'd ever heard him sound. "I'm just telling you, you can do what you want with that information." I hung up, I cried. I sat with Sarah while she held me and didn't try to fix anything or convince me to do anything I didn't want to do. The thing about grief is that it doesn't work the way you think it will. My mother died 4 months later. My father called to tell me. I didn't go to the funeral. I wasn't ready to be in a room with my family, with people who'd watched me be treated like less than, with the performance of mourning that felt like another lie. But after she died, something unexpected happened. My father started sending me emails, not demanding, just updates, small things. He'd fixed something in their house. He'd been going through boxes and found a photo of me from childhood. He was trying to understand what had gone wrong between us. I didn't respond for months, but I read them, every single one. In one email he wrote, "I was thinking about your childhood. Your mother always said you were an easy baby. You never cried, never asked for anything. I think we mistook that for not needing us when really I think you were just learning to disappear. I think I helped with that by not paying attention, by accepting that you were fine when you probably weren't fine at all." I cried reading that, not because it fixed anything, but because it was the first honest thing he'd ever said to me. 6 months after my mother's death, I called him. We talked for 2 hours. It wasn't a reconciliation. It was just a conversation between two people who had failed each other in various ways, trying to understand how that had happened. He told me about my mother's childhood, about how she'd come from a wealthy but cold family, and how she'd repeated the pattern with me. He told me that he'd been too busy, too checked out, too afraid of emotions to realize that his absence was its own kind of rejection. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm very sorry, Sterling. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to say it." The twist came about a year later when I was finally doing really well. The consulting firm was growing. Sarah and I had moved in together. I'd built a life that felt genuinely good, not just successful. My father sent me a document, a will. He'd created a new will 6 months before my mother died, leaving his estate in equal parts to Marcus and me. But there was a letter attached. In the letter, he explained that his marriage to my mother had been failing for years. He'd taken several emotional affairs that she'd never found out about. He'd checked out from the family in part because he was deeply unhappy, and he'd taken that unhappiness out on me by not seeing me. But there was something else, he wrote. "Before I die and I'm in good health, but I'm 58 now and I'm aware that time is finite, I wanted to make sure you knew that choosing to know you has been one of the good things I've done. Your mother couldn't see who you are, I couldn't see who you are for a very long time, but I see you now. You are remarkable, you are strong, and you built something real out of nothing. That's not because of us, that's because of you." Reading that felt like something shifting in my bones. I called him again. "Why are you telling me all this?" "Because you deserve to know that someone sees you," he said. "Your mother couldn't. That's a limitation of who she was, not who you are. I want to make sure you understand the difference. It's not a perfect ending. It's not even a fully healed relationship. But it's something. It's a father who failed, who recognized his failure and who tried, imperfectly, late but genuinely, to make it right. What I understand now is that the kindness Sarah showed me, that quiet, non-performative kindness, was what saved me. Not because it erased my childhood, not because it fixed my parents, but because it gave me proof that love could be offered without condition, without expectation of return. The irony is that my parents showed up to capitalize on my success, and in doing so, they inadvertently forced me to separate myself from their approval as a source of worth. Their greed pushed me toward what I actually needed, a life built on genuine connection, not on performance. My mother never got to see who I became, and that's tragic, but it's also the truth. My father got to see it at the end, and that's something. I think about that moment my mother said I never needed anything, and I understand now that she was describing the survival mechanism I'd developed to cope with her indifference. I had learned to need nothing because nothing was what was offered. And then, when I finally had something to offer, myself, my work, my presence, I offered it to the wrong people because that was all I knew how to do. Building something real meant learning to accept that some people will never see you the way you need to be seen. And learning to be okay with that, not because they're right, but because their blindness is not your responsibility. Sterling Gerrans was the name they gave me when they brought me home, but I had to become myself, broken, defended, scarred and real, before that name felt like it belonged to me. That's the actual story, not a redemption arc where everyone learns their lesson and everything is fine. Just a person who survived, who built something real, and who eventually understood that her worth was never dependent on anyone else's recognition of it. The kindness Sarah showed me was that recognition, and it changed everything, not because it made the pain go away, but because it proved that the pain had never been inevitable. It proved that I was capable of being loved for exactly who I was. And maybe that's the only redemption any of us actually need.